Thanks for tuning in to another episode of The Sly Llama. If this is the first time you're tuning in, you may be wondering why this is even called The Sly Llama. It's because I slyly pretend to be a product manager for products that I did not build, and where the information is only marginally less useful than what you get from the real Dalai Lama. So why am I doing this? After spending hundreds of hours of talking to users, I feel I'm uniquely qualified to share with you a hack to talk to your users. We always hear about how important it is to talk to your users when building product, but in my experience, people are either afraid to do it, silence can be terrifying, you're thinking about what to ask them next, you're not listening to what they're saying, or you just check the box by running through some questions quickly. And in both those situations, you end up with features that don't ship and products that sit on shelves. So the format for this is I'm going to pick up a product at random from Product Hunt. It may be a product of the day or product of the week. I'm going to find the user that this product's intended for. I'm going to chat with them for 10 minutes. The outcome should be some useful information for the team. To prove that this hack works, I'm just going to go in cold. All right, with that, let's go.
Hello.
Kannan, welcome. It's hard to join a meeting without the link.
That's what they say.
Yeah. And you have not chosen the amazing DALI background that I created. You didn't like the Hogwarts?
I can. No, I can actually. Hang on.
Wow.
Boom. Yes.
Wow. You look so...
This is like
so
Nerd
much
Central.
more authoritative with...
like, it's the calculator. That's what it is.
Oh, yeah. You've got the calculator and a big ledger. But that obviously went out of style a few years ago.
Oh, you would think, right? So I go to my dad's audit firm in Mysore. They still have tomes of physical ledger books and everything. And then, so I said, at least can you guys use Tally? He says, yeah, from this we load it into Tally.
Wow.
Like I give up.
So that literally is your dad's office right now. That could be.
No, it is. I should actually send you a picture next time. They have those, the background, those books. They have those thousands of those editions. It's basically all the case laws which are fought at the income tax department and, more senior roles there, like more levels. It can go up to the High Court, and basically all those case laws are like, and I'm like, what do you even do this with this? Apparently, when they write the defense, they can quote the previously read cases, saying, hey, this was in the favor of the assessees. So I'm like, good luck finding anything. But now everything is digitized. And with AI and smart search, they just type specific keywords and it provides some 100,000 case laws. So I think there is hope for change.
So the AI is also happening in your dad's office?
No, I mean, they use a few of these tools, online tools. So there is a very famous publisher called Taxman, Tax MANN. And what Taxman does is they've been the ones who've been collating these millions of case laws over the last 50 years. So they actually realize that they have the entire database which they can actually codify, make it digital. So it's a subscription to get AI input. So he does arbitration and legal cases only in real estate and mining. So he can search for that.
No, I just thought it was interesting that he had both the ledger, like the one behind you, and AI sort of somehow working.
I know, it's surreal. Yeah. But that's probably India in a nutshell for you, right? It's very real.
Yeah. So between that and everything else you're about to tell me in the next 20 minutes, I'm very excited to learn about the exciting world of bookkeeping. And it's one of the fun aspects, to be honest, of being a PM, which is you get to dive into someone else's world and learn about problems that you weren't even aware of. So bookkeeping, what is it? Why is it important?
Sure. So I was just thinking through one aspect when you started talking about this, right? So I became an accountant effectively as a student from 1997. So 27 years ago in grade 11 to now being in accounting. It's probably not your, super cool role or whatever, but what has been interesting, and probably a segue into how I got into bookkeeping, was because I came from a family of accountants, so I didn't know better, frankly. Fourth generation CA, right from my great grandfather, grandpa, dad, and now me.
I knew
So
about your father and
it
you. I didn't know
literally was
about two
like,
generations before that.
yeah. So my
Amazing.
great grandpa and grandpa, when they studied for the CA, there was no Indian CA Act because it was pre-independence. So they had to do the CA with the Institute of Chartered Accountants of England and Wales, ICAW.
Oh, wow.
So we are all the lowly Indian CA Institute guys. That was their
Wow. I
country.
see.
Yeah. So frankly, I didn't know that there was life outside of accounting and bookkeeping. So now, what is bookkeeping in and of itself is basically at a very simple level, keeping track of your company or your personal financial, accounts, your spends, your receipts at a very, very basic level, right? You're trying to track how much money came in, how much money went out, whether it's your own business, your partnership, or you're running a company. I mean, I run finance for a private company in the SaaS space. So, end of the day, there are specific rules by each country, which are called generally accepted accounting practices or GAAP. So, US GAAP is there's India GAAP, and there's also some countries in Europe use something called IFRS, which is International Financial Reporting Standards. What these are basically is building a consistent language across platforms, irrespective of which country you manage accounting in and which type of business you're in, so that if you say live in Brazil and you want to understand the financials of an India company because you're potentially looking at a buyout, so does it translate into your language, so to say, right? Because you need to understand a financial statement. There's a balance sheet which shows what is your cash positions, how much money do you expect to collect in the coming year, how much are you due to pay, all that good stuff. And then there's a profit and loss statement which effectively says, hey, this is my revenue, uh, reduce that with the various expenses. But the real challenge with bookkeeping is, while at a very simplistic level, like I said, it's cash in, cash out, but we don't maintain our books of accounts on a cash basis because all of these various accounting pronouncements and rules require you to follow accounting standards, which are on what is called as an accrual basis. So your expected expenses in the next 6 months is something you'll still have to record in your books of account because it's due to be paid. So you can't just say, hey, I'm good today. I have like, whatever, say $100 million in my bank account. I'm good. It's not the way it works. So that's what's interesting with bookkeeping. It's about, of course, cash is paramount, right? So what we have something when we close books, whether you are an auditor or if you're in the other side as an accountant for the company that's getting audited, the very first thing any auditor does or what you do as a close is cash in bank, which is a bank reconciliation, to make sure that you accounted for all the cash in and cash out, and it ties out to your company's various bank account and bank statements. That is paramount because a couple of decades ago when the big Satyam scam happened, the biggest fraud was in them being able to successfully fudge bank statements. Once you lose track of cash, everything else is a house of cards. It'll all implode. But assuming cash is good, and now at least with things being digital, the processes to verify cash has become better because I mean I manage 18 countries, about 25 bank accounts. So it's not like I'm personally going and tracking it. So we have tools. The reconciliation tools actually are able to do automated bank reconciliations because everything's digital here. ERP is on the cloud. You can pull down bank statements. We set up rules in the bank portals where the bank statements like kind of spat out to you if you want it on a daily basis also. So that's a good thing. And so, end of the day, what helps with bookkeeping is one is, of course, getting the financial health in place, but more importantly, to ensure that the company or the partnership of those, individual small business is running correctly, tracking their spends correctly, following the various rules. So that's what bookkeeping is.
Nice. So you touched on a few things there. So it's important because if you did it wrong, you end up with cases like Satyam, where it can take a company out. So, and that's why this is important. And the few other things you touched on there are, you mentioned ERP. So that took my head to tooling, something I wanted to ask you about. You talked about process, so that took my head. Hey, it's not just you sitting by yourself doing this. There's people involved and there's processes involved. And then you mentioned, buyouts in 18 countries, and you talked about things at scale. So I thought what we could do, and the reason I'm sitting behind a coffee machine is I thought what we could do is before we get to that scale, help me appreciate how this problem magnifies if, say, I was just a barista at one cafe, and I thought we could just play out a story like this. So Starbucks started out in one location and now they're in many, many. So, and you can change this example if you want, but let's just say I'm the owner of a cafe. The reason I started this cafe, I have an ulterior motive. It's really to buy this coffee machine, but I don't have the money for it. So I figured I'll just start with like drip coffee, sell 500 of these, get the money, buy that machine, and then shut the business down. So that's well, maybe not shut the business, but that's the life of it. So if it was just me doing this, let's talk through this now. So I've opened the doors, I've got the sign up. The first customer comes in, I sell them this first drip coffee for $3, right? So it's all, let's pretend it's just cash maybe for simplicity. So I got the $3, and maybe we even need to back up. I had to buy the beans. Second customer, another $3. Now, over the course of the month, let's just say, I don't know, this machine's like $500. So how many? Let's just say I did 150 of these coffees over the course of the month. I don't know, I feel like I need a QuickBooks. I've got maybe a spreadsheet. I've got my bank account, right? So that's the scenario. So now what happens next?
Sure. And I think coffee is a really good example, coffee shop, because one of India's biggest retail chains actually imploded because of fraud, Cafe Coffee Day. We lived in there, right? I mean, literally growing up, that's where you go for your dates and everything.
But they
and
were
to where they
there
are.
literally, but they were there literally on the last trip. Wait, they're gone?
They are in probably, so just to give you a size of scale, they had more than 2,300 outlets to less than 100 today. So that's how bad things went because of cash fraud and everything. So coffee shop is a real
Got to
life
get this right.
example of yeah.
We got to get this right.
No, it's an interesting point you mentioned, right? So, but I will even take it back many steps from what you just said about taking back a few steps just to buy the coffee machine. Is a few more steps behind is identifying location. So you need to understand demand, like what Starbucks did. Start of Wall Street, end of Wall Street, there are like 7 Starbucks between each other, but there's a reason. So identifying location, then the rental, the deposits, then picking the right coffee machine. You choose your source in Chikmagalur or Colombia, where you're going to get your seeds from, through the big retailer or a big distributor, because you're the retail seller here. So all of that has a cost. So there's what is called as the basic cost of capital, right? Because without any business, first you burn a lot of cash before you turn profitable and become what is called as cash flow positive, or because you start earning more than what you spend. Of course, there's the pricing aspect of how much. So it's $3. You have to ensure that it's actually about $2.20 to get that coffee ready in that cup and all of that stuff, right? So that you have a profit margin over time, which you may have to plow back into business for many years. Retail is very, very difficult. And then you have baristas, you may have cleaning staff, maintenance, all that good stuff, taxes, property taxes.
Yeah, totally. So, but just to interrupt you there, before we get to even that scale, I wanted to get appreciation for the problem
of single store.
Yeah.
Yeah. So exactly, right? So I just talking about one single store will have all of this. And then so you are also then you are so passionate about running your business. The last thing you want to do is, actually spend time doing the mundane stuff, which is tracking your cash and your accounting. But it's important, right? Also for 2 reasons. One is keep aside the fact that there is specific tax rules, accounting law, and all that. At the end of the day, you want to know how many people came in, how many transactions happened, is the cash in my till correct, or is $100 a day getting us up by the barista when you're not in the store, right? So that's another reason for bookkeeping. And so I think technology has been good with at least tracking these things, because largely now with chip and credit card and all that, it's easier to track, goes directly to your bank account. But cash is something which is still a big method. So these tills and these machines also, they only open up when you type in the correct amount and the correct quantity of the product. So I think step zero for you to get your accountant to even prepare your set of books is achieved there, because you just print out the daily roll of transactions and take that dump and give it, and the accountant can take it forward from there. So that's how it starts. And two, where I said today technology is where your till can be electronic plus cash, and it can calculate. You've linked it to Wi-Fi, to the cloud, to your accountant's portal, so they get a daily dump online. Today, the technology is such that that system itself will create, P&L, profit and loss statement, at least for that day, to say, hey, this much was consumed. There is still kind of a room for fraud, or I wouldn't say fraud. Also, there will also be like a real waste, right? For example, there could be spillage when your barista is like rushing through a busy morning. Coffee bags could tear and all that damage. So that's a different process that you need to track, where start of day, end of day. I've seen this largely in, alcohol in the bars in hotels, where they do a measure. They have a dipstick kind of a thing. They measure how much booze at the start of day and end of day. So something like that, even in these cases, right? So I think the combination of that is what an accountant can help to do. Yeah.
So yeah, that dipstick measure thing, that's interesting. I had not seen that. I did not know that. So I want to dumb it down even further. So I think because you're at this large scale, you simplified it, but I want to simplify it like even further, like Eli 5 level. So pretend, going back to that example of the drip coffee, pretend I literally opened up my garage shutter at home.
Yep. Perfect.
No rent, nothing. So we'll take that out of the
It's
equation.
yours. Exactly. It's
I'm
your lemonade
sitting there
stand
with my little
kind of a
filter
thing.
coffee jar thing.
Yeah.
First guy walks up. I've got a little square POS in front of me, right?
Yep.
And he's like, 1 coffee. So I'm like, all right, and scans his card. Well, actually, we even took the POS out of this. So I just took $3 from him.
Yes.
Cash. And then I gave him his coffee. He went away. And this, let's just say, happens 10 times in the day, right? So I got $30 today.
$30.
What happens now? So I go to the bank, I put it in. So it's in my bank account. So if I log into my bank account, I see $30. Now, what are the other, I've heard of QuickBooks and Xero and all of these. So does QuickBooks now pull this in? Why do I need QuickBooks, number one? And then two, does it automatically ingest that $30 in?
Sure. So it can only ingest if you, first of all, take that cash, hopefully not lose $2 on the way, or, or buy a Coke on the way. So it doesn't become $24 all of a sudden, what you put in the bank, because at the end of the day, so that has to be tracked. And once it's in the bank, then what gets churned out is a bank statement, right? Because your transaction statement. And then the QuickBooks or the various, like I was talking about Tally in India. So it can be any system, right? So then you can do a couple of things. There is something really cool in the last few years that's called host-to-host integration, where the bank portal integrates into your accounting system. So there's a daily feed of the transactions, but that's when the cash goes in there. And then, of course, the system can track it. But also equally important is that you have a method to input into the system what was your purchase cost of the coffee beans that led to your $30 of, I would say revenue, not income, because revenue less expense is your income. So there is that aspect too.
So now if I log into my QuickBooks or Tally at the end of the day, let's say, so the bank has the cash and it's done the host-to-host thing. What am I seeing now? Will QuickBooks already show me that cash on hand is 30? My call, what would be the other accounting entries, and will QuickBooks just show me that?
It will. And it can show you at multiple views, right? So like I said, assuming you've provided the input cost details and everything. So it will show you your what is called as the trading profit and loss. So you're a trader, you sold coffee, this is the cash earned. So it will show you the cash in the balance sheet. It will also show you, like I said, if it was $2.20 to make the $3 coffee, it will also show you the end of day profit of $8 on the $30 sale.
Yeah.
As long as we input the data. So the only thing with bookkeeping is it's only as good as the inputs. Otherwise, it will miscalculate data. Simple as that.
Got it. So now that makes sense. So I think one thing you keep kind of pointing at, and I think it hits on the importance of this being a good process, is the things that can go wrong,
Yeah,
right? You've touched on Satyam, you've touched on Cafe Coffee Day, you've talked about me buying a donut for $2, and
yeah,
so what I'm learning is the importance of this is, so let's say now that was day one, I got my $30 and I do it over 20 days now, 20 days in the
yeah.
month. So I've got $600 now. I'm ready to buy this machine, which is
Mm.
like a $600 machine. Now it's also the end of the month. Does bookkeeping typically happen, tying this back to bookkeeping now, does it
Yeah.
happen once a month?
So bookkeeping is real time. It's happening all the time as you make every transaction, right?
Okay.
Because every time you have that POS sale or you give a receipt to the customer and give them the coffee and take the cash, that should get accounted for.
Right.
Now, what happens at the end of the month is you kind of tally. And by the way, you can do it end of the week if you want to, or end of every 10 days to take stock of what happens also. The intention is to put out a set of financial statements so that you know the health of your business. Like you
Mm.
said, if you, let's say, do it for 20 days and it's $600, what you will probably not see in your bank account is $600 because you're spent out of that for the next batch of coffee beans and everything because it's an ongoing business unless you've already accounted for it. So what you have is a cash flow, not a cash position, which is so cash inflow was 600, but your end of month cash position could be 100, and that's fine. I mean, that could also be including the profit. So there is going to be a point of time where your uh, end of month cash and your total net income or net profit will like be way off, right? Because you can still be having cash at the end of the month but running a loss because now you're eating into your setup cost, the capital as we call it. Now, keeping that aside, so end of the month, what we do is we get all these financial statements ready to probably give you that reality check.
Yeah. And in my case, in my small business
Yeah,
case, I don't even need, do you agree? I don't even need you, for example. Like you're too expensive resource. Like QuickBooks
correct.
will just do the bookkeeping for me in this example.
Yes, it will churn out a set of financial statements for you. So
Yeah.
when do you need an accountant is probably just to kind of collate it once a year when you're filing your, returns for this, coffee shop which you set up kind of a thing, right? So there is that balance you need to maintain. You don't need a full-time accountant all the time, but why even small businesses use maybe like a local accountant, although they can directly do QuickBooks, is just a convenience. You just don't want to waste time. So you get this accountant, like I said, you take the entire, from the till, you take the entire transactions for the day and just dump it on this guy who's sitting in a strip mall next to the nail salon and
Yeah.
he'll take care of it.
Got it. So this was an example where, like, this is literally the simplest of examples. Now, help, and I think you've done this already a little bit with the failure modes, but let's just say now it's not one store anymore.
Mm.
I've got 10 stores. What scales as a result of this? So what's the coordination? So why, again, dumb question, but like just like I did my thing by myself, why
Mhm.
couldn't each store just do their things by themselves? Everything just aggregate into this one QuickBooks, and I'm home dry, no?
Yeah, so that's exactly the intention. So once you open, say, 25 stores, each store has to maintain it at an individual level, right? It doesn't matter for store 12 that store 19 is doing what they're doing. What
Yeah.
matters is store 12 has to maintain the track of their whatever 500 coffees a day that were sold and how it's tracked and everything. What is the risk at this scale is if you don't have your controls, right? Because I think a couple of the examples I talked about was fraud, but most of the things screw up because of basic stupidity. I mean, incompetence, or the fact that they are not financially honed. A barista is probably not even tracking that this is going to cause a profit for the business, right? Because the
Mm.
barista is a passionate person. Sure, he's creating art actually, because it's not just about running you know that you don't put coffee beans in the machine and great coffee comes out. It's the art of it. So what really becomes important then is when you're at that scale is to ensure that your process and systems so that the barista doesn't have to, you know, waste their time or their mind space for anything other than their main thing. So it's literally cash in, they check that, put it in the till, move it out, and like I said, the coffee bean inventory has to be tracked separately. And also, what would happen is then when you have 25 stores, you are buying your inputs, the raw material, coffee beans, etc., at bulk. So you're suddenly buying 100 kilos of coffee a day is the equivalent of what you want. So 3,000 kilos of coffee probably in bulk. So tracking it, so you'll suddenly have a head office and the branches. So tracking on which branches are doing most business. So how much coffee do you send to each place? Because the worst thing you want is at like 11:30 in the morning running out of coffee beans. Because what I've observed, especially in retail, is once you're out of stock and the customer gets their fix elsewhere, they may not come back to you. Unless the other elsewhere place was so bad that they realized it was only because I didn't have a choice. I had to go pick up a coffee there. And if it's like happens twice in a row, that's it. You've lost a customer for good. So there's that other side to it. And keeping that aside, coming back to accounting itself, yeah. So tracking this, the spends you bought in bulk, ensuring that that is currently accounted for, yeah, that is very important.
How would I, in this example of like 25, now I've done so well, I've got these 25 stores. How do I even realize? So I'm looking at the QuickBook instances, I guess, for each of these stores. How do I even realize that store 13, like something's going wrong there? If the guy bought if the barista there, was buying a donut a day, how would you catch that, for example? Now I have an accountant because.
Yeah, absolutely. You can have an accountant, but the more important thing is the system itself. First of all, you can track all of your spends, all of your purchases for tracking the raw material inventory, etc., at a store level. So these accounting systems are good enough where at a subcategory level, and then there's a consolidated level set of accounts that can get created. So what you can then do is do a like-for-like comparison. And then in very old Excel formula style, right? There's this fund of min and max.
Right.
You try and target what is your median spend if my average coffee sale price is this. So suddenly if you find some store where your average cost is way over and we're keeping aside rental, electricity, and all that good stuff, right? Just on coffee production sale, something is off. That's when you start questioning. Okay, something is going wrong. Is it that they're having more inefficient processes? Are they kind of having more spillages, leakages? Are they, or it could be something as simple as it's a slow area, so they're doing more discounts. So your price per coffee could have got dropped. So that should reflect in that. So that's not invalid or improper. It's a strategic thing because you're looking at the entire business and saying, hey, for my overall business to grow, I still need to have a store there, because you can treat it indirectly as a marketing spend. Instead of putting an advertisement banner, you're just setting up a full coffee shop. And these are real life examples. I have seen one of the big brands in India, which is Reliance, right? So when Reliance got into retail, their initial plan was they'll spend INR 5 crores, right? Which is whatever, 50 million INR for marketing spend. Then the brand leader came and said, look, you can use that to open a store, and that'll give you equally good amount of footfall, and out of curiosity, people come. So that's the thing, right? So you do this comparative analysis, and by you, I mean the system can do it and churn it out for you. If you're having a smart accountant, he can or she can, build out those queries. So a lot of it is once you figure out how your business is running or what you're expecting your business to run by, right? It's a coffee shop. What's your business? What's your profit? What's my average cost? These are the things. So you build out those rules. Back in the day, we needed these techies who knew SQL and things like that to even create those queries. But nowadays, a business analyst, an accountant can actually build those queries in the system, and so that will churn out. Early warning signs can also be built where if in that month it's trending bad already by week 2.5, so on the 14th day of the month, you'll get a report saying branch 14 seems to be off the charts for some reason. And then you'll obviously have to go look into it.
Investigate why. Talk to me a little bit about how is my tooling changed? So when I was just one store, I had my bank account, I went deposited the cash, showed it to me in my QuickBooks. Is that still my accounting stack now that I have 25 stores, or do I have a few more things to help me now?
Yeah. So what will happen is, one is you obviously want to track each branch separately, right? So one of the things that's always recommended is for each store you open, set up a different bank account.
Okay.
So that very basic, simple stuff. So you don't struggle at the end of the month to kind of reconcile your cash in and out with 35 bank account transactions, 35 branch transactions in one account. So one of the recommended things is keep a separate bank account. And the other benefit is, once you, let's say, decide that it could be for a good reason that you decide you shut down a branch, you get like twice the space in the same area. You realize your footfall is good, so you want to pick up a bigger space. So you'll shut down the smaller branch and things like that,
So
right?
you want to silo them as much
Silo
as
it.
possible.
Yeah. So that your unit level economics. So that's something, as you kind of scale up bigger, start talking to a potentially a private equity investor who wants to look at your business. One thing you'll always keep hearing is unit level economics.
Right.
Because that is the kind of definition of the health of your business, actually. If they are comfortable that, and what I observed also, because my spouse is in P, right? So is they actually randomly walk into branches because they invest into a lot of retail work. They'll try to buy a coffee, talk to that server and things like that to get a sense. So unit level economics is critical to ensure the health of your business, because it's that every single dollar, every coffee, every extra shot of espresso in your latte needs to get built correctly, and all that good stuff. But yeah, keeping it siloed is important. Then other additional toolings, etc., is to make sure that you're set up. So it's not just the accounting books, right? So you have enough good products, so it's good QuickBooks or Tally or whatever you have in the market, right? Even Zendesk, they have a good tool and everything, accounting system. It's the compliance, right? One
Really,
aspect we
Zendesk
haven't
has a
touched
good.
about.
I didn't
They
know that
have
Zendesk.
one. They have some kind of an accounting ERP, or they kind of run one with a partnership with, I think they have a few preferred partners, right? So the nice thing is, as a small business owner, you have tons of very good quality but reasonable accounting system options. And especially with things now in the cloud, you don't have, earlier there was this on-prem cost, you had to set up a server and all that noise.
Yeah.
So all of that, keeping that aside, so that's all much cheaper now, affordable. Compliance, though, is a big factor, whether it is how you have your sales tax tracked, because a lot of the US states have sales tax, some don't. All that noise has to be dealt with, unfortunately. So tracking that at a level where these systems will actually identify the component of the sales tax in your billing to the customer. So that's the good part. But then to ensure that you file your sales tax returns, which is not once a year, but in many states it's quarterly, some states it could be monthly. All that noise is important to handle, because you could get shut down as a business for one branch not following up their process in their state, in that
But this
particular
sounds to
state.
me like, say, the example of tax seems rule-based in some sense, right? Like, say, Texas has no state tax, but California has
Correct.
a state tax. I could potentially just code that into where my Tally or QuickBooks, let's say, and
Yes.
right? And it
It
would
will. Yeah.
automatically
It will take care of the whole thing. You
takes
just
care of.
have to ensure that you follow the rules, which is super critical, and then file the returns, file your taxes. So compliance noise. So that's another reality of bookkeeping. And also, because once you expanded that big, 35 or 25 branches, you have so much staff. How are you tracking labor law and compliance of that? Some states may mandate that they're part of the union. So it's not everyday problem, but if things go bad, then how are you thinking about it? So some things to consider.
So how is my finance team looking different in this 25 store scenario versus when it was just me? Do
Sure.
I even have a finance team yet? Could I just go
Not
to a
necessary. Exactly, right. So you definitely need to have it at least at the minimum outsourced. So there needs to be somebody who's looking at it. You don't need to have a full-fledged in-house team. So the question is, when do you build it in-house versus outsource, right? And that kind of is the story of my life. A large part of the work that I do today, because I'm not the junior accountant typing in the journal entry to identify the intangible value of my 45th store kind of a thing, is actually like in my current, organization. When I joined, we were a 3-member accounting team with 20 countries. And so the discussion with the CFO and the chief accounting officer was, we won't have the time and ability to scale that big and build in-house. So we're going to outsource all of our accounting and payroll and everything for those regions. But with a clear business plan that we're going to bring everything in-house, set up like a global center of excellence in India, which I'll oversee. So we have like a 30-member team today, blah, blah. However, what was the business plan to build out an internal finance team was that the cost of operations will be much cheaper. If you outsource it, the outsourcer has to pay their labor cost and tack on a margin. So the cost of operations, and also what happens is once you have a third-party organization, they have specific rules on how many hours in a month they'll service you, because they have 25 clients. So they'll give you 6 hours on the third Friday of the month could be your day, or that particular working day is yours. On that day, if you don't have your data ready, then it's going to cause delays and risk to closing books on time. Having a full-fledged finance team in-house will eliminate all that noise, because you're managing it fully in-house. It's your team. You close books at your convenience and all that good stuff. So that is the balance you have to maintain on. Do you want to then build out a full-fledged finance team, hire a finance leader managing that business also? So as you scale up, it makes a lot of sense. That it's not called a break-even point, but it's like the inflection point, right? Where you realize as you scale up. The other model is hybrid. You keep third-party accountants to do the daily bookkeeping, go collect the transaction details at the branch level. So they'll do the collating data, because you don't want your employees to kind of not do non-qualitative work. You hired, say, a real smart Alex to actually do the analytics. They are the ones who are going to identify branch 12 and branch 13 are less than 1 mile from each other. It's eating into each other's profits or eating into each other's business, right? So that's the qualitative stuff you want your finance team to do. Then you kind of accept that, okay, it's going to be a bit higher from a cost perspective, but I'll still use a third-party firm. So that's a hybrid model, which is also very popular.
So did I understand? So switching this away from now this cafe example. So I've understood now how it can get complex going from my little garage cafe to the 25 stores. Understand kind of how are the problems scale. But switching it now to your company, and did I understand that you're just a 3-person team managing 20 countries?
We were 3-person team. Then we became like 6. So the other 3 that I hired was managing the outsourced companies, which were managing the other countries. So each person would manage like 6 countries, but he had a full-fledged third-party accounting team. To today, those 6 or 7 people are now the senior guys who are my directs. And now we hired like junior level accountants. So we had to figure out the mix. Do I want like qualified CPAs or college grads with like a few years of accounting experience? Good. So we built that mix so that we have cost optimization, but at the same time, compliance and quality doesn't drop.
So so it sounds like a lot of people involved. So it's the 6 in-house with how many of these outsourced outfits? Sounds like there are many kind of strewn around the world is the mental image I got.
Yeah, that's what it was. So it was like 17 countries. So each country had their own third-party accounting firm. So now we brought that all in. So today it's the entire org is in-house. So that was my journey over the last, I've been here almost 6 years. In that, the last 4 years was to kind of bring everything in-house, set up shop, but also handle complexities, because I'm managing Korea, Japan, China, where they have local bank accounts which only churn out local language financial statements or bank statements. So I had to kind of figure out how best to navigate through the Japan bank account to log in. And so same with something like France or Germany. Simple things that we take for granted, right? How you use a comma, right? After 3 digits.
That's right. Like
it's actually a dot or a
it's
full
a dot.
stop.
Yeah. Decimal points, comma. Yeah.
Decimal points. So just training my team, super smart, but just explaining to them the nuances of, hey, managing APJ versus India versus EMEA, what are going to be implications. So that's been a real fun learning journey, because a lot of it is when something really crashes is when you learn a lot. The
So
screw
it
ups and the
still
failures is
doesn't
very
seem,
memorable.
yeah, totally. Yeah, no, but it still doesn't seem, it seems, I'm surprised at how lean the team is. Like if it's just,
No,
will
today we're
it still,
30 people. Yeah.
today you're 30 people. Oh, okay, that makes more
Yeah.
sense, I feel. I would have guessed tens of people.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And in that 30, I have three what I call as digital creatures or digital beings. So we've actually, I mean, my company is an automation product company. So we automate processes. So we actually could actually help our team members identify more mundane, repetitive processes and have it automated. So we could, and the intention was not to reduce headcount, right? In the sense that I have the existing folks. I'm like, hey, what is the most boring thing that you do every day, kind of a thing? Identifying that, and most times it was like receiving that invoice from a particular supplier, setting it in the system for it to get paid 30 days later. We automated the entire accounts payable process to help them do the more qualitative stuff, to improve their
Interesting.
life.
So, yeah. And so coming to that point of boring work, and what separates a good accountant from not a great one?
So very high level, of course, there is a company OKR, then there is a finance team OKR. But to be a good accountant is not about just knowing your knowledge, book knowledge to pass your CA or a CPA program, right? That's obviously the qualification, but just the real life experience of handling accounts, understanding the business of a company. So as students, when you're studying for the CA program or CPA program, you do an internship. You go join a Deloitte or a KPMG for 3 years. You do audits. The purpose of that is to just understand the ins and outs of any business in different industry,
Yeah.
so that when something doesn't look okay, you're able to challenge it. So the willingness to always question, right? Trust but verify. So you accept that, this seems okay, but we'll check it in. So I think that being open to being curious is a very, very important trait, I feel, because it's in this most boring, most mundane stuff where you actually identify a fraud. Something didn't look okay, kind of a thing, right? And you're not looking to identify a fraud. A lot of it is accidentally identified. But that's the thing, right? It's the bank reconciliation which got screwed up, which Satyam's at that time 7,000 crores was equivalent to $2 billion scam
Right.
at that point of time. So it was because when a junior accountant was tracking something, he said, look, the numbers don't look okay. Raised it up to their manager, who was clean guy, who was not in cahoots with the founders, kind of a thing. So yeah, I think being curious, in addition to being good with having a good hold of your numbers, is important.
So what's an example of the, oh, it's almost time for you, isn't it?
Yeah, I can do 3 more minutes. Yeah.
No. It's good. Let's pause here. No, this was great. This was great, by the way. So it's all small nuances, but a couple of good things happened with this call, right? You're a great user, customer, or whatever, if you were a potential user, because you automatically give out a lot of information. A sticky situation is when I get one-line responses from people. You really tease out info. So if I were to look at a breakdown of talk time, it's perfect. I want to be big eyes, big ears, and I want you to be big mouth. So that worked out great on this call. The other thing is, I didn't ask you yes, no type questions. It was mostly how, why, open-ended. And so and you were great with like just giving me lots and lots of info. Typically what would happen is I would set up like a series of these, like maybe 2 or 3 or 5 or something like that with you in a real world scenario. And we'd kind of peel into this a little bit more. So some things we didn't get to, what's an example? You mentioned, for example, you've automated away some boring work. So, what's an example of a boring task that you automated away, this week or last week and that kind of thing. And then, other discovery pieces like when was the last time you introduced tooling, into your accounting stack? How did you go about that? Could you just go in, put in a credit card and start to try it? Or did you have to go to someone and get approval? How does that typically work? And then to really kind of peel into that workflow. This usually happens over a few calls. You can't get everything knocked out. This first call, even this was a pretty hectic call. Like normally, no one will want to join a call back with me because this is pretty hectic.
No, I'm fine.
Normally, yeah, normally
You're
it's
my
a little
free
bit more
ride
of...
to Sonoma, so that's fine.
Man, this was great.
No worries.
We'll
We
take
can
it from
plan to
there.
catch up for another session whenever you want. That's no problem. Have a good evening.